Újvidéken vagyunk Szerbia második legnagyobb városában, ez pedig mögöttem a műszaki kar, többek között ezt is elfoglalták a diákok. November 1-én leszakadt az újvidéki vasútállomás előteteje, ami azonnal megölt 15 embert, azóta még egy halálos áldozata van a balesetnek, és nagyon sokan meg is sérültek. A felháborodás tiltakozás követte, amit a rendőrök nagyon erőszakosan kezeltek, megvertek egy csomó diákot Belgrádban, ami még nagyobb felhördülést váltott ki, és hamarosan átvették az egyetemisták az irányítást ebben az egész országosan növekedő mozgalomban. Részt vesznek benne a taxisok, kijöttek a gazdák traktorokkal megvédeni a diákokat, hónapok óta tart a tiltakozás, számos egyetemet, ifjúsági központot elfoglaltak, és most eljöttünk ide Újvidékre, hogy arról beszélgessünk tiltakozókkal és olyanokkal, akik évtizedek óta követik a szerbiai mozgalmakat, hogy miben más ez, ami most történik, mik a reményeik, mit szeretnének elérni, és mi a jelentősége annak, hogy sokkal szélesebb rétegek csatlakoztak most, mint az elmúlt 10-12 évben bármikor.
In the 90s, we had this feeling that there is a world that kind of wants us if we change something, and there's a world waiting for us over there if we just remove Milosevic and kind of become a normal country. And now we feel that we are alone because this world actually accepts Vučić completely.
After 12 years, you don't know who to trust anymore.
We older guys, we don't have patience for this.
We can hear the two statements all the time. This is not the politics, and everything is politics. So it just depends from which angle, in which situation, the same person saying those sentences.
Azok kedvéért, akik nem követik közelről a szerb belpolitikát, pár dolgot tisztáznunk kell. Alexander Vučić nagy politikai túlélő, aki 2012 óta előbb miniszterelnökként, később államelnökként egyre rövidebb gyeplőn tartja a politikai életet az országában. Vučić a szélső jobb oldalon kezdte a pályáját, az első országos kinevezését 98-ban kapta, akkor 2 évig információs miniszterként szolgált a Milosevics érában, miközben javában dühöngött a dél-szláv háború, ő pedig vasmarokkal irányította az ország médiáját, Rogán Antal mai pozíciójához hasonló helyzetben és nagyon hasonló módszerekkel. 2000 óta saját politikai birodalmat épített, és 2012 óta folyamatosan építi le a demokratikus intézményeket és az érdekérvényesítés Szerbiában. A korábbi választásokon alaposan dokumentáltak széles körű csalásokat. Az évtizede tartó tiltakozásokkal szemben a rendőri erőszak nem ritka és nem is visszafogott. Szerbia nem tagja az EU-nak, de több mint egy évtizede tagjelölti státuszban van. A csatlakozási folyamat nem nagyon haladt sem erre, de nem is fordult vissza, dacára az egyre nyíltabb elnyomásnak, amiben Szerbia lítiumkészletei szerepet játszhatnak. Az Átlátszó riportfilmjét a boszniai lítiumbányákról linkeljük a leírásban, azt is nézzétek meg. Persze a szerbek nem mostanában kezdték a tüntetősdit, jelentős történelmi hagyománya van a politikai ellenállásnak. Nem kell a partizánokig visszamenni. A Milosevics rendszerben éppen Vučić első minisztersége idején jött létre az OTPOR-mozgalom, akik nemzetközi hírnévre tettek szert. Ma többek között egykori OTPOR-tagok is csatlakoznak, hogy átbeszéljük, mit tanultak a korábbi tapasztalatokból, és miben teljesen más, teljesen új ez a mostani tiltakozás. A vendégeink Branka Ćurčić, újságíró, a kuda.org médiaközpont programfelelőse és a kuda.read oldal szerkesztője. 2006 óta dolgozik a CK13 ifjúsági központ fenntartásán, ahol többek között a diákaktivizmust és önszerveződést is támogatja. Visnja Vukajlović harmadéves díszletmérnök hallgató az Újvidéki Egyetem műszaki karán. November óta részt vesz és szervezi az egyetemfoglalásokat és blokkádokat. Alexander Reljić, dokumentumfilmes és újságíró. 20 éve készít filmet az egykori Jugoszlávia nemzetiségi viszonyairól, nacionalizmusról, háborús bűnökről, és persze a délszláv háborúról és annak örökségéről. Legutóbbi filmjének a címe Süketítő csend, a szerbiai diákmozgalmak történetét dolgozza föl. Dejan Tomka hangmérnök, podcaster, aktivista és tartalomkészítő. Belgrádban él és aktívan részt vesz a mostani diákmozgalmakban is, ahogy korábban maga is diákként a 2000-es évek óta, úgy az utcán, mint az online térben.
Hi, hello, welcome. Thanks so much for taking the time to talk with us. I want to start with the junior reigning member now, which is not the usual way, but we refer to this as student protests. There have been protests ongoing for at least a decade, every year with varying velocity, varying success. Now the students have really taken the baton and are leading the charge. Why is it specifically the students?
The students are leading a revolution is mostly because we are the children of the parents who were on the streets during 5th of October in the 90s, who were students back then. We have this like culture developed here, especially in Serbia, about students leading a revolution. So we decided to react after our friends, our colleagues were attacked by masked hooligans when they were in November in Belgrade. Those are the students from Faculty of Dramatic Arts. Then we started going out on the street for 15 minutes of silence. The incident in November happened in Belgrade, where a couple of hooligans attacked students who were peacefully protesting. Faculty of Dramatic Arts started their own blockada. They started blocking, and all of us kind of followed as support. And then we came to our petition, to our 4 demands. I think that now the students have the power because of that whole historical narrative about how students here are usually starting revolutions. They're blocking, in the 90s they were blocking, in 68 they scared Tito or whatever. And I think we managed to get good enough momentum to actually wake up the citizens, because that was actually the point of all of this, that during the past 10 years, mostly young people or people from NGOs or activist organizations were the ones on the streets. You could rarely see our ordinary worker, ordinary person from a small village on the street because of how difficult it is actually to raise your voice. We managed to have that momentum and to gather people around by saying, okay, we are not in any relationship with NGOs, with activist organizations, with political parties, which gives this position of meta-politics to this whole discourse of the protests and everything. That's how we managed to get so much trust from the citizens, because after 12 years you don't know who to trust anymore.
I fully agree that one of the most important things is actually that they have this, as students, they have this, let's say, they're clear of politics. Maybe people regard them as kind of politically naive, not in a bad way, just not spoiled by politics. And I'm using the word spoiled in purpose because for those 12 years there was an extremely powerful anti-political and anti-opposition and anti-whatever connects with politics narrative that was coming from Srpska napredna stranka, Serbian Progressive Party. And they're using all the media and all the channels and all the means actually to destroy the image of politics in people's minds. So average Serb feels that politics is something really bad, that it's criminal, that it's something that spoils everything, it's something that should be removed from our lives. And it's very connected also with NGOs and with all the political organizations. So the fact that actually students went in this field and said, okay, we are not connected to anything, gave them this huge political capital that they can actually mobilize people and they can push them. But the context is, for me, it's kind of frightening because it's a wrong image. Politics, it's not what's bad, and parties are not inherently bad. But there are bad people in politics, there are bad organizations in everything, and that's something that we need to change. That's something that if we want to continue, if we want to make our country in democracy, modern democracy, we need to accept politics. We need to accept that politics is a part of our lives that we need to get involved with. We need to accept political parties as a way to organize and to participate in politics. So this is kind of dangerous narrative. I understand, and the only way to go into this is actually to what's the word, to fence themselves off from politics. But we need to find a way to jump over that fence.
The worst sentence, the worst spin in Serbia is everyone are the same. So that was the you know, their real weapon against any kind of opposition voices in these 12 years, you know.
And it's also interesting coming from the government that they are saying all politicians are tainted and problematic, us included, but we're already in power. And of course, our countries share this very much between them. Branka, you have been reporting on protests for a couple decades now, and you have quite a historical perspective. I mean, not 70 decades, but let's be honest, quite a couple of years. How does this wave compare to what has been going on, say, the last 12 years and what you saw before? So you saw a previous generation also going through these political cycles and trying to get rid of another tyrant, deal with corruption. How does this compare?
For me, it's difficult to compare because I think this is something different and new. There are lots of new elements in this predominantly students' struggles. I honestly don't believe that the struggles are cumulative. So each one is singular, basically, and each has its own subjectivity, political subjectivity, although as we started from the beginning to talk about it, I think this is the crucial point, this refusal of politics. So I will come back to that. You asked about OTPOR movement. I said I wouldn't compare it. It was a students movement as well. Maybe Alexander can...
It was more activist.
Yes, to tell more about it. But what is interesting comparing this present struggle with those protests who has been going on for the last 12 years since the Serbian Progressive Party is on power, is that before these protests, all the protests were initiated by the opposition, political opposition parties or individuals coming from it. So this is quite a different, but this narrative also changed during those 12 years. As Višnja suggested, they are the children of the people who struggled during the 90s against the war and against the Milosevic politics. But they are also the children of the people who, during those 12 years of this kind of populist government, they are the children of the people who were, for example, quite a lot engaged in the domain of civic activism. So we had lots of informal local initiatives of people defending their neighborhood, defending their housing, defending the greenery. So kind of an eco consciousness and eco struggles. And from their parents, let me say parents, this generation, since I had lots of connections with them and worked, collaborated with them, this anti-politics notion was quite evident. So we can hear the two statements all the time. This is not the politics, and everything is politics. So it just depends from which angle, in which situation, the same person saying those sentences, from which context is pronouncing them. So basically, those are this is not the politics and everything is politics is the basis from is the basis for this refusal of the politics, which I think, as I think also Dan mentioned, that in this situation today, this enables massive situation that we have today, because people are disappointed, maybe also in the political parties of the opposition, in politics as such, in this government. Yes and no, because for me it's very, very unusual. This sentence coming from the from student movement saying we want to change a system, but we don't want to change a power. That's seen as a short-term. Changing the power, changing the government doesn't change the whole picture.
What these electoral systems are very good at when they are dysfunctional is directing resistance or directing any kind of political will into some subgroup, into some institution, and then so much energy goes into just maintaining that institution, it becomes its own goal, it can really easily lose the focus.
Now, after the 6 months of those struggles, there is finally, finally or not, this discussion, should the students support or demand, expand their demands on asking for the snap elections. So this is completely new, and it's not discussed among all the faculties and in a blockade and in universities. But this is, and the expert government is something that they more or less agree on. But what I wanted to say, we know that the electoral processes are corrupted, especially here. It's evident. There are evidence that are proving corruption and misuse of the ground scale.
I was a part of all the protests from the 90s and after all. And I was also involved on 9 March 1991, which was like the first big opposition rally against the Milosevic regime. And I must say that the politics in the 90s differs from what we have today, because opposition parties were very strong. Every rally we had, every political crisis we had, it was also led by students. So after 9 March and big protests in Belgrade and a lot of police brutality all over, we had student protests, which, you know, continued to lead people after that. So we had also in 1996, 97, the big students' rallies also, and also the political rallies. We had the situation that in noon we have a student protest, then 3 p.m. we have opposition, you know. So
it's a full-time job.
It was a full-time job in the 90s, and we had all those new student leaders who became new politicians. Like, and we had that popular students. We had this personification of the movements before. Today we don't have that situation. We older guys, we don't have patience for these processes now, you know, and we are asking questions all the time. What do you really want? You know, do you want to change this government? You don't want to change this government? Do you want to go for the elections? You don't want to go? Who you support or you're not? You know, all that questions we are. But the thing is that I found myself trying to find some mistakes in the student movement.
One huge difference between 90s and now is that in 90s we had this feeling that there is a world that kind of wants us, yes, if we change something, and there's a world waiting for us over there if we just remove Milosevic and kind of become a normal country. And now we feel that we are alone because this world actually accepts Vučić completely.
And the expression normal country keeps coming back from the late 70s in Poland. We want a normal democracy. We want normalcy, a normal country. It resonates very much, I think, in Slovakia, in Hungary as well, oftentimes in Romania. And the normalcy has also changed. There are many contenders wanting to adopt Vučić's reign all across Europe, within the European Union, who would be happy to work in this way.
We felt then that we are fighting to become part of the world. Whether if it's true or not, I'm not sure. It wasn't that different, but there was this feeling. And now we don't feel that. We feel like we are left somewhere behind and nobody's waiting for us.
I feel like we're more in a situation where everybody just wants to exploit us. Like nobody wants this geographical part for what it is, for like what it has to offer by itself, but they just want to like have it to exploit us, to be like a part of a bigger scheme between Russia and European Union, as we are this like place where all of those big forces meet. Like that's, for example, is the lithium. There is no response from anyone besides our neighboring countries because of the lithium and because what all of those bigger forces can get because of Vučić, and that's why they accept them. And that's what this fight kind of was for us, which is to put our country on the map and to show that, okay, we exist and we have some people living and breathing here who are fighting for a democracy, who don't want to go to a different country, and to people ask, do we have television? Do we have electricity? Do I live in Siberia or Syria? Is there still war? We just like kind of, at the end of everything, want to be put on a map, and we don't want to be looked at as some lesser people or be exploited for something that's really a small amount of everything that we can bring. And I kind of feel like we learned a lot of lessons from OTPOR, especially with like young people who want to use revolutions as an opportunity to become politicians, because at the end of the day, some young people who were students found their way to become parts of the political system and probably bargained about what to do as students, what to do in the political whole system. And that's why we decided, okay, if you want to be a politician, don't be a part of this, because we don't want to risk anything for this to fail. And that's what makes this scary and our movement so scary to people who are against us, and what brings it actually so loud out in the world. For me, it's beautiful that now we have runners running to Brussels. For me, it's really beautiful how young people in Croatia are waiting for us, and how the officials who are the mayors of those cities are talking about this, that we are showing to the world and to us that we are a new generation and that we are capable of healing the wounds, and that we are capable of accepting the mistakes, of accepting the history, and moving on, trying to find a better future for us. And if that's the only thing that this blockada does, I'll be sad, but I will be really happy to show like everyone that we can love each other, to be like Balkan people, truly, you know, like not to be afraid of your neighbors. So I said like a bunch of topics, sorry guys.
You can if you want.
This movement is more mature and more unique than OTPOR was. This is the situation that this organization is made by itself. It's not supported by anyone. It's not supported by any political parties or any, I don't know, international foundations or whatever, foreign any sources. This is real movement. This is something which is, you know, like a grassroots thing. And this will be something that we will, you know, learn in the future about what kind of organization. I mean, we had this OTPOR as after democratic changes in the 2000s, we had OTPOR as a brand which was exported, you know, all over the world. Like,
video game. There was a video game of OTPOR. There's a bunch of comics that were actually distributed to like smaller countries.
Yeah, it was an international sensation. Az átlátszó.hu hónapok óta tudósít a szerbiai megmozdulásokról, ahogyan például a Belgrád-Budapest vasútvonal fejlesztésén feltárt korrupcióügyekről és visszaélésekről is. Az ebben a videóban látható helyszíni riportok Pápai Gergő operatőr munkái, az Átlátszó csatornáján meg tudjátok nézni a riportokat a tüntetésekről, és a Szerbiában és Boszniában tervezett botrányos lítiumbányákról is. És még valami. A magyar kormány legújabb független médiát célzó elnyomó akciója mélyen húsba vág az Átlátszónál is, akik a független újságírói, tényfeltárói munkájukat finanszírozzák részben nemzetközi projektekből, hiszen hát a hazai pénzeket már monopolizálta a kormány. Ennek az úgynevezett tavaszi nagytakarítási akciónak épp az a célja, hogy az ilyen ügyek, mint a Belgrád-Budapest vasútvonal sínei alól elsinkófált bazaltkövek, ne derüljenek ki. Most minden korábbinál jobban számít a támogatásotok. Ha tudtok, támogassátok adománnyal az Átlátszót, link a leírásban. De most már térjünk vissza a beszélgetéshez.
Let's reflect on something that's very peculiar for me to see. Why the pilgrimages? There's walking pilgrimages, there's bike tours to Strasbourg, now running to Strasbourg. There's this whole very, I would say, almost ancient feeling symbolism to the movement. I understand that the trains were stopped so that people couldn't go to the protest, and that's how the first couple came about.
It's more than that. It's not just a lack or stopping the means of a regular means of a transport. Maybe Vishnya would say more about it. But it is kind of a pilgrimage. It is kind of a taking up the freedom to, how I see it, and also kind of a responsibility to conquer your own, in a good sense, positive, affirmative sense, your own country, to go to the places and to connect the cities and the smaller places which were completely forgotten and neglected. It is some extraordinary things are happening. The other day at the blockade of the national television in Serbia, during the Eastern holidays, the students from Novi Pazar, who are Bosniaks, Muslims, therefore, came to help, to take over the blockade so the Christians can go home, Christian students can go home and celebrate. We had at the balcony at that blockade, the war veteran, Serbian person from the wars from the wars in the 90s, probably fighting the same Bosniaks and Croat, now greeting students with Salam Aleikum, and saying to the parents of those Bosniak students that came from Novi Pazar, those are all our children and we will take care of them. This is something, even for my older generation, unimaginable.
There is a hope for this country.
This is something that really never happened. Today we have war veterans who are protecting blockades and students, their pilgrimages, their protests. So this is something that never happened. Never happened. The new situation is also in Croatia now with this marathon. Not only that people are coming to greet and to support the students. I heard before, like the young people from Split in Croatia, but also from some older generation saying, our Serbs. So this is also very particular. This also never happened. It's completely new. This is something that students managed to do. So if it's amazing to hear our Serbs after the bloody wars during the 90s.
You know where it happens all the time?
And just to say, it wouldn't be the same if students would be saying we are Yugoslav, we are Yugoslavia, because although it was emancipatory socialist project, this hegemony of Serbia was all the time threatening, and it came to realization during the 90s, during the wartime. So to hear our Serbs and to hear Salam Aleikum today during those protests is pretty much unbelievable.
So what I experienced secondhand working in Vienna is that this kind of unlikely alliances happen all the time in diaspora.
Oh, yeah.
And the diaspora out of this region is gigantic. I want to ask you all about the role of the diaspora, because it also has a huge effect on many in the active generations disappearing from the country or maybe participating remotely. We saw this in Romania for a hot second, after the disaster at the collective club fire, where a lot of people died. And a huge protest movement was formed. And when the emigres came home for the summer breaks, they made these gigantic protests happen. I know it's a bigger country and whatever, but it's still very sensible that the diaspora wanted to remain attached, but it's incredibly hard to remain politically active and supportive from afar. So how do you keep in touch? What role does the diaspora play? Aren't you afraid that all young people are just going to leave the country once they have their degrees, like they do from Hungary?
I was born in 2003, so children from 2000 and, for example, until 2006, we were raised under this sentence that is, be good at school, study languages, because you're going to have to go. Because our parents are the children of immigrants who had to move from different parts during 3 wars in the 20th century. We are the children who were born in a democratic country that was in the process of democratization, who was really unstable. So we were raised under that premise that we are going to have to leave at some point in our life to actually make a future for us, which for me was translated in my head like so many people died because of war, because of violence, to put me in this situation, to have a privilege to live in a city, to have a car, to have a breakfast, lunch and dinner, and then I have to make something out of it. So a lot of us left. I was actually supposed to go, but then I decided to stay because I wanted to change something. I think I have a lot of friends in diaspora, like most of my friends from my childhood live in a different countries. Some live in Asia, some live in Africa, some live in Europe. They all yearn for home. They all, when they come here, they're like, there's no place like Serbia, there's no people like people on Balkan, and it hurts them from inside. It hurts their primal identity and their actual reason to exist, that they had to leave to actually be able to make something of their life. So I think that the diaspora was a really logical support which already existed. For the past 10 years, they already existed. I remember when we were doing protests in 2023 in Birčaninova, when we were blocking the ministry in Belgrade after stolen elections, we had a lot of support from diaspora. They organized their own protests. You will get in contact with them because they just text you on WhatsApp, or they text you on from some Instagram account or whatever, and they have their own autonomy. They usually follow what we do here, and then they organize it as citizens there. I have a bunch of friends in Berlin. From what they've learned, they have to have a translator there during protests because of all those pro-Palestine protests. There's a new law that you can't speak in a native language on the street on a protest. So they have a translator. They usually tell it to the police it's going to happen, and it's a pretty simple story. I think it's more about that we always have their support, and that after this there's actually a lot of people who are thinking about coming back, which I think is a good thing, because if you go somewhere, you see some kind of life that you dreamed of. Maybe you like it, maybe you don't, but you saw something else. You experienced some different kind of life. You saw different people on the street. Being open to different experiences is a level we need to get to. We managed to get to a level of what Branka talked about war veterans greeting Bosniak students, about Croatian students, and probably war veterans from Croatia greeting Serbian students, which is something that a lot of NGOs have been tried to fix for 30 years and more. And the next step is teaching the people not to follow a cult of a personality, not to follow a leader, and to be open to different experiences, because I think we would benefit from people from diaspora coming here with new experiences, different diplomas, different ideas and different connections.
During the 90s and protesting, we were protesting and feeling, this is very true, that if we make a change, we would become part of the world. EU, US, part of the world, that's true.
Normal world.
But I think, but I think the world today is a different place. the world has its own worries. And I think that Serbia is not in a focus at all. I think we know what is going on. We know that wars are there. We know that populism is rising and nationalism. We know that the crisis, economical, is probably never stopped, just going up and down. So especially, and we know that this international order is changing very much. West, East, it's very different now. The values are completely different, and what I'm also seeing here in those students' protests in Serbia, within this larger context of the world that has its own worries, is kind of a national, the need also for some kind of a national renewal. It's not nationalism, as we were saying, but a national renewal. Like Serbia, yes, our country or your country, but set up in a different way. I think in this changing world, which is not going into a good direction, this is also kind of a isolationism, new sovereignism, I would say. So people want to live here, people want to decide for themselves. There are lots of democratic elements in that. Of course, we should be asked about how we want to live, work, decide, etc. But I think it's not anymore opening to the world. It's closing down to what is only possible, what is only left.
I'm not going to be popular with this question, but I do have to ask this. Tensions have been flaring up, especially in the past couple of years, with Kosovo. And there are contested representations. There have been protesters who made it a point to go out there with maps that don't acknowledge Kosovo as its own unit. This has the potential to explode a room immediately, and it harkens back to nationalist wars not that long ago with extremely bloody results. How do you approach this?
We don't. I'm afraid we don't approach this, and I agree. This is a boiling pot. As far as I understand, students are claiming what is the general feeling, and that is that Vučić sold out Kosovo, that he is the traitor. So this is kind of a opposition stand to say Kosovo is still Serbia. It's not, it's evident, and this is something that older generation, as activists during the 90s, as Alexander and myself partly, it's maybe a potentially dangerous place. And you are very right, you know, it's not the same, the position of, in relationship with Bosniak and Croat, the same language, more or less same language, more or less similar culture. But with Albanian people, accessible, yes, thank you. But with Albanians is completely different. They were, in Yugoslavia even, they were seen as a second order citizens. So it's, for me, it's a danger. I try to emphasize those affirmative, positive things with war veterans, with not saying nationalism, but national renewal. But you are right, Kosovo would be an issue. And I think also like the old disputes that always explode here, like Kosovo, is it part of Serbia or not? For example, Srebrenica could be also a potentially sensitive or exploding place.
Probably I won't be right. I won't be right, but I'll try to explain what is my feeling about the whole right kind of iconography in the student movement, and of course the flags with no surrender or whatever. First of all, I'm sick when I see that kind of flags, because I did everything to have and to find a connection with the Kosovo and Albanian colleagues. They are not focused on Kosovo in any way. I think they don't understand what is actually across the border, what is going on. They don't have any kind of connection with Albanian students, for example. They don't have any connection with the culture.
So you think it's Kosovo. More ignorance, right?
So it's more kind of ignorance and more like an internal thing against Vučić.
I need to clarify something. I am not holding you accountable from some moral high ground. I'm from a country who has been very enthusiastically ethnically cleansing. We don't teach the cold days in the school curriculum or any of the mass murders that my not so glorious country has perpetrated. So don't get me wrong, I'm not like lecturing you on anything. I'm just asking your opinion.
When it comes to students, generally we decided to follow the constitution when it comes to Kosovo. So all the flags you see that are no resistance, Kosovo is Serbia, everything that has to do with nationalism, that's something that an individual brought to the protest. We have an internalized agreement on which flags and which messages we are giving to the outwards, what's our export. I fortunately have a lot of friends in Pristina, in Kosovska Mitrovica, and I think a lot has changed since '98. We have support from students from Pristina. They have given us their support. Students from Kosovska Mitrovica didn't, I think, but that's probably because of the pressure, because life in Kosovska Mitrovica is much more different than in Pristina. There is much more political pressure, both from our party, ruling party, and from the police, Kosovo police there. But we follow the constitution. That's what we decided, because this is not our fight to fight. Why are we not bringing down the government? Because that is not our fight. Our fight is to make the institutions work. The fight of our parents, grandparents, about everyone who's older than us, from citizens, is to bring down their government, is to deal with all the questions that are not appropriate, maybe, for the students to solve.
Why not?
Yeah, I wanted just to add something about Kosovo, because Kosovo as a political subject was abused for so many years now. And from everybody involved, from our regime, from Kosovo political system, Europe, United States, everybody actually, I don't know why, I really don't understand why the Kosovo is so interesting and so important. But what I can see is that actually our regime here used Kosovo first to steal the money from the transfers and everything, but that's not that important thing. What's important for me is that it's used as a, let's say again, I mentioned fence, as a kind of fence to fence off the Serbia from this feeling or connection with European Union or international community, because there is always this feeling that's enforced all the time that somebody's stolen part of our country. And it's kind of true, it is. I mean, it was part of Serbia, it was part of Yugoslavia, and now it's not. So it's very logical and very normal to feel, okay, it's not fair, it's not fair, although I don't need it, me personally, but there is this emotion that was used by our regime for so long and so many times repeated that it's stolen and that bad guys from other countries actually did it on purpose because they hate us, and that's used actually to control the idea and to control this right-wing narrative to kind of.
The whole idea of loss of territory has been animating Hungarian politics for 100 goddamn years. And the first time the Orbán government actually acknowledged the Serbian-Hungarian border is when they built a fucking razor fence on top of it. So I feel you. I feel you.
And that's why. So it's abused, and now because it's normal. It's kind of an open wound, you know, and it's left open on purpose. And you can see now, several days ago, actually your faculty went out with the idea maybe to go to elections. Yeah, is it? Yeah. And I don't know if it was like a day, maybe less than a day, when Serbian Progressive Party profiles on several networks actually started asking, oh, but then you need to say what you want to do with Kosovo. So it's always used as a trap, as a political trap, you know, oh, what about Kosovo? And it's kind of not in our hands.
Because I think everybody knows that in this situation, how massive this is, there's people from every part of the world. For example, I was at uni on Blokada, and there was my colleague walking with a Z t-shirt, with a Pro-Russia t-shirt. Of course I fought with him, but that's who is also here. It's everybody, the whole country, left wing, right wing, nationalists, not nationalists. And I think that touching the subject of Kosovo could ruin everything really quickly. I think it's not appropriate for students because first, we are really young, we don't know enough about it. Most of us were not even born during that time. A bunch of students were raised from families that were torn by the war in the 90s and then by the wars in the 90s, and then they were raised under that notion that, you know, like something that makes you more nationalist, but bad way nationalist. So I think that if
chauvinist,
students...
I think.
Yeah, chauvinist.
Yes.
But if students were now to touch Kosovo, that would be another topic on our back, which is so sensitive that that is really not something we should touch. We should just decide to follow the constitution. If somebody wants to do it from the students, okay, then join like some organization that does it. Join maybe to spread education, join YIHR, go to some activist or whatever.
I respect your position, but let's talk about these alliances because especially speaking from a perspective where rural communities and big urban centers all across not just Europe, but most of the developed world, which Serbia is very much a part of, tend to be polarized against each other. And this is a long division, that's a stupid expression. This is a long-lasting division that has been exploited also for over a century, that the villagers, the farmers, the let's say blue-collar workers are supposed to be against the urban intelligentsia, right? How did you overcome this? I have very rarely seen taxi drivers volunteering to ride across a country with university students in solidarity. I have very rarely seen thousands of grandmas baking for the students all over the place, and especially not the farmers coming out with the tractors, which made my eyes water because I also come from a peasant family, and I was just like, my father would be there if it were in Hungary. How do you build these alliances? How does this come about? And this is, and you're not going to like me for this question, does an alliance this wide require the kind of sacrifice that the Novi Sad railway disaster produced? We saw something similar, as I mentioned, in Romania. Does it always take human lives and tragedy for these many people across such a wide spectrum to come together?
It's a difficult one. I think that maybe that can connect with another question about the student marches. Actually,
yeah, there's a very strong moral symbolism to this.
There is this personal sacrifice moment in it because it is sacrificing. In the images we see kids with, not kids, but students with wounded feet and a lot of, it's hard work to do that. And then we feel they're sacrificing, it's giving the importance to that moment. And then they finally acknowledge the people in rural areas. And it is also important that for a long time in rural areas, there is this idea that I should somehow find the money to send my kid back to city, and not back, but forth to city, to study and escape from this bad village life. So actually, a lot of students are from all those rural areas, and they are kind of coming back. So I don't feel that huge divide. I don't see that huge divide, although there is, of course.
I feel what you're saying, but there is a very strong political tone. Those who appoint themselves representative of the real people of the land tend to exercise this anger. And there is, I mean, moving from a village to a capital city, I did feel this kind of condescension for a long time. And it took me a good 2 decades to actually use my dialect again.
I think that's more of a question for an older generation, because my mother, for example, she's not from Novi Sad. She came here to study. She was laughed at because she is not from the city. That was a big problem beforehand. But currently, I don't face it a lot, especially because most of my friends are not even from Novi Sad. I like to hang out with people like from different places, because Novi Sad is a university city. Everybody comes here to work. Everybody comes here to live. And during the years, it just became normal that you are not, your whole family is not from that place. The difference is in the lifestyle, and maybe because it's much harder, for example, to have your opinion in the villages. I think maybe to better structure this, what I want to say is to go back to those pilgrimages. I think they are a legacy. First, during the 90s, students were walking. Yesterday, I found a paper that showed it's a release from my great-grandfather from a concentration camp. He walked from Italy to here. It's something that we carry in our blood, walking for justice. Maybe it sounds too nationalist for me. I don't think it is. It's maybe love for my family. And
no, they did it in the Baltics as well.
It's kind of a legacy that we have. It was also a different tactic, which is going through villages to show them what's actually happening. Because it's difficult to protest in villages, because most dangerous people moved from capital cities to villages. They know where everybody lives. They know your whole family. They know where you work. So it's much harder to go out somewhere and say your opinion, and there's 5 of you on the street, while there's 5,000 more people who are afraid, and then that hooligan knows where you live, and you just disappear in the darkness. That's why we're walking, to show that they can't disappear in the darkness, that we are there, and that they should join us. Also because villages are full of old people mostly, old people and dead people vote for this government, which is true, and because of the media darkness that they face. And for example, in my village, which is probably the worst situation currently, there's people on the street protesting, and it's grandparents of my friends who are studying with me, which means a lot. To see grandmas and granddads on the street greeting students, for them it took their child to be put into danger. For them it took the child of someone who's like going to continue their legacy to be in a dangerous situation, so they realize what's happening here. Taxi drivers, they were always on our side.
This is a very strong religious imagery across a lot of religions, by the way. So it's not restricted to Christianity or Islam, which
especially
both heavily employ
Middle Ages,
but Muslims as well.
Of course.
The Hajj and the whole tradition of becoming a different person and sort of the spiritual journey. And I wonder whether this imagery also, or not just imagery, because it's not just a projected image. I wonder whether this gesture resonates so much with more culturally conservative people as well.
I think besides pilgrimages, we have the crime, corruption, arrogancy of the ruler. So I think it also erased these divisions and, of course, unite us all. So it's, you have all the processes together going on.
Yeah, but there seems to be a tipping point. Does it have to do only with the tragedy, or is there something else beyond that? Why?
We have the tragedy. We have 13 years of this arrogant rule. We have kids on the streets, which are our kids, which we have to defend. So all that sort of that is the whole context of the story.
I think actually if it wasn't for, this is going to sound really bad, if it wasn't for the attack on the students on Faculty of Dramatic Arts, if they didn't start their blockada, nothing would happen. People would continue living every day.
Probably not.
Not continue living, but situation would be much different, because in 2023, it was hard to invite people on the street when our elections were so stupidly stolen. Everybody knew they were stolen. It was so hard to get people out because there's this lethargy in the air that you can smell when you go out on the street, especially in Novi Sad, which is like a slow city, you know, Austro-Hungarian architecture.
It's a huge city, though, let's admit
Yeah,
that.
but okay, compared to a lot
very
of
weak opposition parties.
I've heard it from my Belgrade friends that people are criminally polite here, which I find very endearing.
And I think that if it wasn't for those two situations after the fall of the canopy, things would more or less stay the same. You would have the opposition trying to do something but failing. You would have the opposition again, just like in the past 2 years when students organize a protest, they announce it on the same day on the same location and come and take over the protest. You would have the same situation and same narrative happening just like it does during the last 12 years.
The Ribnikar tragedy, it was
2023.
2023, yeah.
3rd May.
Mass killing.
Yeah, 3rd May. It's actually,
school.
so yeah, it was awful killing. My kids were actually in that school. They were, fortunately, they were not harmed. Then it's very emotional part of our life because actually 2 girls from my son's class were killed in that shooting. But it wasn't the subject. So there were huge protests then. Actually, one of those protests, I can't remember now the date. It was, I think, there are different methods of counting. I think it's like 60 to 80,000 people gathered on that day. It was huge protests. One thing that I noticed then, and in many protests before that, is that actually youth and students were not all present, not at all, but it was a very small number. When you walk there, it was mainly people 30 years old and above. So at 30, 40, 50, there's a lot of people in like their 60s or 70s on those protests, and there were no kids. And there were adult kids, students. So it is interesting to what happened actually now that changed this situation, you know, because my feeling is if students joined back then, maybe this would be the tipping point moment that changed everything. And so there is a process that was going, and also it's interesting that probably a lot of students that are now students were not students back then. So is it maybe a generational change? Is this generation of students that kind
Maybe
of
we were also
brought something new with them?
Coming out of quarantine years that really stomped down on the kids.
Maybe, yeah.
Way worse than the adults even.
Yeah, but there were because, for example, a lot of not market research, but istraživanje javnog mnijenja, public opinion, researchers also confirmed back then that kids were hugely anti or apolitical or even anti-political, and the usual answer to a question, will you vote? Was nah, I'm not into politics. It's not something that I understand. I don't understand that. I want so something really. Actually, this didn't change. It's still, or it changed a little bit. Kids are still not politically interested in politics in a partisan way, but they're finally involved in politics in a good way. They now feel that the politics is something that is created by people of this country, and we all need to participate. If we don't do it, then the bad guys do that, and they do it in a bad way.
My impression was regarding the one of the main demands from the student movement, that institutions start to work, to do their job. Of course, institutions are procedures and people. So people in the institution should start doing their job and not
blindly following
the government corrupted politics, because many of people in the public institutions are blackmailed in order to keep their jobs, and to get and keep their jobs they have to be members of the ruling party, and they have to do all the political party jobs instead of their own jobs. My impression was that was the call for the people in the institutions to change the sides from the regime to something else. This didn't happen. Happened with teachers in the schools who boycotted their educational process, and they were punished by the government. And the same is happening with the professors of the students who support, in majority of the cases, students. The Vučić and his government decision is to stop their payment, not based on any decisions. It's a pure pressure on them, and that pressure, I'm afraid, has its influence. So this is, I would say, a very difficult situation, and the pressure from the government, from the power, also with the physical violence that we experienced yesterday, it's also rising. Like the protests and demands are spreading and rising, but the oppression is becoming more and more severe.
I must say that I'm happy that this process is going on, and it goes in a really great direction. There's no going back anymore, and I think it's really changing political scene in Serbia in its essence. And especially, we were not talking a lot about this plenum on the faculties, but I think this direct democracy will definitely change the political scene. I think that the politician in the future in Serbia, I mean, I think it will be like that. The politician in the future will be more like a service to citizens, and I think and I hope that we will also change our electoral system, that we will vote for our delegates, not anymore politicians like political parties. I think that we are going in this direction because of the plenums and everything, that we will find a way to actually legalize our delegates as our voice in the parliament or whatever government or other institutions. So I think the whole thing is going on in the right way.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you so much. We took a little bit longer, so the protest is already underway. I apologize.
You couldn't stop us, basically.
Well,
that's when you get Serbians.
But then
Serbians talking about politics, you know.
Or football.
This talk show is presented by Eurozine and Display Europe. The program is co-funded by the Creative Europe program of the European Union and the European Cultural Foundation. Importantly, the views and opinions expressed here are those of the speakers and the authors only. They do not necessarily reflect those of the European Union or the European Education and Culture Executive Agency. Neither the European Union nor the EACA can be held responsible for them. Now, not that we would mind them taking advice from us. Today, we're hosted by Photostorm Media Podcast Studio in Novi Sad, the courtesy of the Opens Youth Center in Novi Sad. Our media partner Átlátszó has been reporting on the protests, blockades, and also on prospective lithium mining consistently, as well as on the scandalous Belgrade-Budapest train line where the Novi Sad station disaster happened. It's their footage you see across this episode.